I'm Justin Glaw, writer and journalist, and I've spent my career chronicling the violence, unrest, and chaos of American life. On this podcast, I'll discuss the events roiling this complex and troubling country and speak with some of the people trying to make sense of the madness that pervades our world. This is American Doom. Hey, Justin Glaw here, and today we're talking about Dalton Mattus, a Trump supporter and right-wing extremist in Illinois who has been arrested while carrying what police called improvised explosive devices. An online post that a tipster pointed us to, Mattus was also, quote, ready for the fucking Civil War and was a zealous believer of right-wing anti-government conspiracies. Today I'm talking with my partner in American Doom, Bree Zender, who spent as much time digging into Mattus's online posts as I did last week ahead of our story at Rolling Stone. Mattus may be a troubling sign of the violence to come from right-wing forces as election madness takes hold over the next few months. Let's dig in. Hey, Bree, how are you? Welcome officially to the American Doom podcast. I'm sitting here with Bree Zender, who is, I think she just said, a Swiss Army knife for all things American Doom. Bree, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to.
Hey, Justin. Thanks for having me on the podcast and for putting me on the team for American Doom. I do a lot of things. I'm kind of doing brand management type of things, marketing, as well as I'm also a reporter. So I've been doing some occasional reporting for American Doom, helping out here and there, whatever you need me to do, I'm there.
Right. And you helped out with this story that we're going to talk about today, which is the Dalton Mattus story, which kind of came out of nowhere, but also came as a result of a lot of the stuff we do, which is focused on election deniers and, kind of like broader right-wing extremism stuff. And this story came to me from somebody who like reads what we do and was like, hey, you might want to know about this guy. We came into it like basically off of a tip, and it just sort of expanded from there. And I guess if you could give me like your quick thoughts on like what we found in this case, and then I'll hit some things too.
Sure. So if you haven't read this story, let's just kind of go through like a quick rundown of what happened. I've got the police report here. And on May 17th, around like 3 a.m., this guy was pulled over, and the driver, who is the significant other of Dalton Mattus, was arrested for driving with a revoked license. And police found several items of drug paraphernalia, as well as a canvas pouch bag, which is key, under the front seat where Mattus had been seated. I'm quoting straight from the police report. Yep. It weighed approximately 5 pounds and was locked with a combination padlock. And Mattus said that the bag belonged to him and that they would need a warrant. They got the warrant and they opened it in City Hall. Right. And they found a .45 caliber handgun, as well as 2 pipe bombs. And they say in this police report that BBs are visible at the end of one of the devices. And so City Hall was cleared out, as far as I remember. Can you corroborate with that?
Yeah. Yes, right. So this was like a random traffic stop. This guy gets pulled over
in Pekin, Illinois.
In Pekin, Illinois, which is not far from my hometown of Peoria. And he get pulled over like 3 o'clock in the morning. And they find the bag. He's like, give me a warrant. Then they let him go, apparently. And I guess hours later, drag the bag into City Hall and open it and go, oh, whoops, there's a couple of bombs in there. And then they call in the bomb squad from nearby Peoria, which, I mean, even if you're driving really fast with lights and sirens, takes at least 20 minutes. So kind of a big fuck up there on the part of Pekin police. But whatever. Eventually, Mattus, and this is something that local media reported that came out while I was writing the story. Mattus tells police that he had the bombs to protect himself against undocumented immigrants and like a corrupt government. But after they find the bomb and the bomb squad comes in, then they go to his house. I think probably because they found the bombs, they figured they should probably arrest him now. So then they go to his house and they find like a couple more bombs there. And I guess that's when he says the stuff about undocumented immigrants, which is not surprising based off of what we found
Yeah.
on his Facebook stuff, which is just sort of insane. So I want a couple of things from you on like some things that stood out to you, and then I'll kind of give you my little take on what stood out to me from the stuff that he was posting.
Sure. So, kind of the primary part of what I focused on in this reporting was looking at the social media pages and just trying to see what kind of themes there were. And it was really just kind of a run of the gamut, a kitchen sink full of every conspiracy theory that you
Right.
could possibly think of. And like
Yes.
multiple posts a day, he had more recently had been posting a lot of TikTok videos onto his Facebook. So, like importing those links and putting them onto his Facebook.
Yep.
It didn't seem to be getting a lot of traction among his friends, but he was just posting a lot of this
Yeah.
material.
Right.
Um, so among the conspiracy theories you can add to these, there's things about like chemtrails. There's like QAnon style, Democrats or pedophiles, like sex
Right.
trafficking, hashtag save the children type of stuff. A lot of stuff from
Right.
2020 and the election stealing. He had material from, people from like Tucker Carlson to like Andrew Tate and uh, a lot of different things. There's 9/11 conspiracy theories all into there.
Yep.
It was just a run of the gamut of every conspiracy theory that you could possibly imagine onto his Facebook that was public for anyone could look him up and see it.
Right, right. Maybe he didn't know that it was public
He
though.
didn't
I
know.
think as
Yeah, that's true.
as I think we're going to soon find with some of our election denier people in Mississippi and Arkansas. I mean, there is no concept of privacy settings or how visible this is, or even what their Facebook page even looks like. I mean, these people,
Hmm.
like me as a reporter, when I post something, I go and I double check it to make sure that the words are, there's no typos. But like, I don't think most people do stuff like that. So the things that sort of immediately stood out to me that were like, because there's a lot of these guys, right? And, yeah, not a lot of them are arrested with pipe bombs, but a lot of people post a lot of crazy shit online. So I've got a pretty high bar for like, I guess what it takes for me to expend my time and resources to write about somebody. But immediately what I saw was the stuff about the Civil War. So,
Yeah,
um, on September 5th, 2020, which is, I'm not really sure what was, I mean, there was a lot of stuff happening
a
at
couple
that
months
time.
before the election at that
Couple
time.
months before the
COVID.
election. Yeah, COVID on the heels of a lot of, the George Floyd protests of summer 2020 and all of that
Yeah,
stuff.
and vaccines, that was something that Dalton was
Right.
very concerned about. That's probably one of the main things that he's concerned about
Right. But
from
as
his
far as
posts.
the day of September 5th, 2020, I don't think there was really anything specific about that day that I remember. Anyway, what he wrote on that day was, quote, "If it was up to me, I would gather patriots and go to civil war against these domestic terrorists." Um,
Yeah, and
a,
that's
a,
in response to like, I'm literally quoting it like, if you support this and are against Trump, get the fuck off my page,
yeah,
or gather your nuts and say so I can get you scumbags taken off myself off of
right. And
Facebook. And this is sharing a post that we can't see too. So
we
that's kind of,
can't see it. Right.
yeah.
We can't see it. And it's unclear why we can't see the post that he's referencing. So when he says, if you support this, he's talking about whatever it was that he tried to post, but the post is gone. And it could be for a variety of reasons. Frankly, I suspect it's gone because it was removed by Facebook for being false information, or maybe it was just straight up against their code of conduct for like
Yeah.
violent stuff or something.
But
Who
at the same time,
knows?
it could also be like a post you shared from a friend who, doesn't publicly show their posts.
Right. Yes,
It just as
that's
easily
true
could have
too.
been that too.
That's true too. So that's Civil War reference number one. Civil War reference number two, which I think I'm valid. I think it's a valid concern to like. That's kind of the bar that I'm looking for, right? If we're talking
Mhm.
about Civil War, like kind of important to note. Civil War reference number two comes a few days after the election. Quote, "I am completely disgusted that people voted for Joe Biden to be president." I think he also says he's a fucking pedophile, which is like a QAnon thing. "I am
Mhm.
fucking irate. This is complete and utter bullshit. I'm ready for the fucking Civil War." So that's a few days after the election.
So there's kind
Pretty
of like a through line of Civil War themes and, possible threats of violence, nothing super concrete of like, here's my plan. But
right.
he's in a mindset of feeling so threatened that civil war is on the table.
Right, right. And that is a good point. Like we went through and at one point, when you came over, we went and we looked for like bomb, gun. We looked for
Mhm.
posts and pictures about firearms and weaponry and stuff like that. And we didn't really find anything. I mean, we found a lot of stuff that was like, you know, rants about gun laws and gun reform and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
there was nothing obvious like him posting pictures of his weapons or anything like that. Um, but along the lines of like talking about, so these are two direct Civil War references, but there
Mhm.
was a lot of other stuff that he was posting that sort of like talked about the concept of civil war or like fighting the government, but it didn't use those exact words. And I don't think I have those posts up here in front of me right now, but there was some stuff that was like kind of like, we got to be ready. They're going to come to our door one day and we got to be ready to fight back and stuff like that. So while these were the only two direct references to civil war, there was lots of other sort of intimated threats about like violence against the government or like fighting back against the government.
Yeah, and
Um,
a perceived attack against him and what he represents, I think. He thought
right,
he was gonna be attacked. He's gonna defend himself as opposed to being the attacker. That was kind of the sense that I got.
right. Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, for what? I don't really. I mean, for just
Yeah,
being
it's
like
hard
a
to suss what that means, you know, and
yeah,
what that
like
comes
I
from.
mean, clearly law enforcement is not looking at this guy's posts or a lot of people who are posting this stuff, or else they'd probably be taken in for questioning at some point. So it's not like the government is like looking at what he's saying online and they're going to come beating down his door and say, "Hey, bud, you're done now." I mean, because if they were, I mean, so this guy was if they were, then they would have known because this guy was making no secret about his anti-government views, conspiracy stuff, and we're not talking about like one or two posts over the span of the last 4 years. We're talking about a massive volume of posts, right?
Yeah, it's multiple posts a day for, you know, I mean, it depended. I think it also depends on like, the day and how much can be seen through different periods of his life and how much is publicly available on his Facebook. Because,
Right.
for all we know, there might be a lot more that's, only shared among his friends or not his Facebook friends. So we don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, he could have. There could have been even more for all we
Yeah.
know. But here's what we do know is that so like I went back to 2016 ish, maybe even 2015 on his page to see what I could see. Again, maybe not seeing all of what he was posting, but there was nothing political from up until 2020. And when I say nothing, I mean like nothing, like not even happy 4th of July, like nothing
Mhm.
even remotely political. And then in 2020, it starts in June 2020, which is
A
right
couple
at
months
the
into pandemic.
couple months into the pandemic. But I think also my hunch is that is the height of protests
Mhm.
following the killing of George Floyd. Um, because I was there, like right. That was May. George Floyd was killed in May because Ahmaud Arbery was February, and then the
Were you
video
in
came out.
Peoria at that time?
No, no, no. I was in Minneapolis for George
Oh,
Floyd.
right.
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
remember. Ahmaud Arbery was killed in February, I think, of 2020, but the video didn't come out until May. And then, like 2 weeks after the video, my memory may be skewed here, but the timeline between when the Arbery video came out and when Floyd was killed in Minneapolis was like real tight. And so, like, I basically left Arbery and went straight to Minneapolis. And anyway, this is all to say that, like, June 2020 is when protests about the Floyd stuff were
In
really
particular in the
ramping.
Midwest.
Right. Yes. So they're like really ramping up. And consequently, at least for Dalton Mattus, the political posts start ramping up too.
Yeah. And, things like Black Lives Matter was a part of his posts and kind of, you know, making a lot of kind of false equivalencies with
Right.
Black Lives Matter and kind of saying like, "Oh, they're telling us we're ashamed to be white." He would kind of say, I remember that phrase in
Yeah,
particular.
there was some proud to be white stuff sprinkled in
Yeah.
there over the years. One weird thing, like one of the first political posts that I found was June 2020, and it was pro Black Lives Matter. Let's just say.
Hmm.
I mean, it was a video of Travis Barker and Machine Gun Kelly doing a cover of Rage Against the Machines, "Killing in the Name of," which
Hmm.
was in direct response to the murder of George Floyd. But then after that, completely off the right wing deep end. So I would love to know how it went from his apparent, support of, because like, how could you not, like, how can anybody watch the killing of George Floyd and go like, yeah, fuck that guy? Like
Yeah.
nobody in America virtually. Now things have really changed since then. Like George Floyd is now, there's a whole truther thing about how he didn't actually die from the knee on the neck, and he had drug intoxication and all this
Yeah.
stuff, and he was
People forget
actually
the shock of it. Once you forget the shock of the video and
right,
seeing it, then you know our other biases and racial
right.
tendencies tend to move in.
Anyway, but so after that, then it's right off the right wing deep end, and I took a little video of I was kind of scrolling through a doc on my phone, and I posted this on American Doom's Instagram, that like just shows me scrolling through the doc, and it's crazy because I mean we did a pretty good job of documenting I would say like 80% of the daily posts, but like you just can't do every single one
Yeah,
of
there's
them.
only
But
so much you can track.
right. But just like a quick rundown here, some of it like, and I was doing like one sentence or like 2 word descriptions of it. And so like some of them had said just like adrenochrome meme, Tucker Carlson video with New World Order, Biden pedophile meme, election rig, chemtrails and fluorides, Democrats are scum, fuck the left, on and on and on, 9/11 conspiracy, Andrew Tate, like misogynist stuff, anti-trans stuff,
Yeah, a lot of
QAnon,
anti-trans stuff.
a lot of anti-trans stuff, QAnon, sex trafficking, save the children, pedophilia among Democrats, COVID and vaccine conspiracies. Um, it really went on and on. And yeah, anyway, so like that then gets us through the rest of 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. And then at some point in 2023, the TikTok stuff starts, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I know that you looked at some of that stuff. Like, remind me of all of what's on there.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting to see there was a bit of a certainly a shift in kind of just, at least what we tend to think of in terms of like someone who would share these kind of conspiracies. It definitely took kind of a pro-Israel turn, or not pro-Israel, rather, like pro-Palestine turn.
At the end. Yes,
Yeah,
it
at the
did.
end. I didn't really look as much into that, but there was that kind of caught my eye as like this doesn't seem like the typical pattern that you see of these types of people who engage in these theories.
Right,
Um, he started a TikTok, and he started kind of going on his things. He would have a lot of filters on it, so like a lot of times
right.
it looked like his identity was obscure, but we were able to suss that it was him.
Yeah,
Sometimes the filter wasn't on too, but he went on some rants about just gun laws in Illinois. Um, I think he didn't even mention his prior convictions that he had, and that
right.
he wouldn't have access to a gun, but he's just had some frustrations about
Like
the way that
he
gun
was
laws
he
work.
was complaining about how you couldn't in Illinois buy an AR-15 and extended magazines. I don't really know if that's true. I mean, I know Illinois has fairly restrictive gun laws compared to a lot of other places. I don't know off the top of my head whether or not it's true to that you can't buy an assault rifle there. Like, and even if you can't, you can just drive right over to Indiana and get one. I mean, that's how it works. And yeah, it's obviously very ironic that he's sitting there. So
Hmm.
so Mattis, I guess we should also say, has a pretty extensive rap sheet
Yeah.
that he had before all of this, and it includes felony convictions, which of course means that you are not allowed to possess firearms. And those felony convictions, if I remember, one of them was a theft, The other one, I know there was a domestic battery
Yeah, I believe that was the
conviction.
felony from 2018.
Right. So there was a domestic battery felony. He had a couple, maybe one or two other
Yeah, property
misdemeanor
damage
thefts.
and like theft under $500, but they
Right.
added up.
Right. He was the subject of a restraining order at one point. And yeah, so like there was, I don't know, three or four misdemeanors, a couple felonies, and the restraining order thing that were on his rap sheet before he got picked up for what is now, at least for the moment, a felon in possession of a weapon slash unlawful use of a weapon charge that he's sitting on in good old Tazewell County Jail right now. But yeah, so the TikTok stuff, I don't spend a lot of time on TikTok because I am 40 years old and I feel like that's some sort of cutoff. You know what I mean?
Justin, if you ever need like me to teach you my ways, I'm happy to share my talents of prolific TikTok watching with you.
Okay, here's what I'll say. From what I saw, I don't want any fucking part of it. Like, and so like I dug enough through of Dalton's Mattus's TikTok, like to find out a couple of things I found out. The first thing is like he was not following like big accounts. There wasn't. It's not like he was following like I don't know if there's a Tucker Carlson TikTok, but like just as an example, he was not following like a big like these big right wing conservative
Corporate,
accounts.
yeah,
Right. He
even
was following random ass people. Like at least they seem random to me as somebody who's not on a
yeah,
platform
people who seem to have a
currently.
significant following, but they were not people that we think of when we think of like the titans of conservative media.
Right. Or right wing influencers, even extremists. Like I'm pretty up to snuff on like extremist kind of like fringe right people. And like nobody that he was following was ringing any bells for me. I didn't know who any of these people were. The other thing that I'll say was both fascinating and extremely troubling to me was that he was sharing these videos that like I don't know how to describe them other than that they seemed like just sort of hypnotization slash straight up brainwashing stuff. And like, for instance, there was one video where on one side of the screen, it was like a cartoon that was playing out a monologue from some TV show or movie that I haven't had a chance to look up. But the gist of the monologue was like a father goes to a man who's dating his daughter and says, like, are you going to be a good man for my daughter? And this guy goes on this rant about how actually, no, he's going to be a bad man because a bad man is what you want to protect your loved one. So he's going to kill if he needs to for his daughter. He's going to do these things that a bad guy would do, but really it's good, right? Is the moral of this monologue that this cartoon figure is going on. So that's happening on the left side of the screen. On the right side of the screen is what I can only describe as like an ASMR video of somebody carving an ornate carving into a watermelon. And I know that sounds weird, but that's what it was. So on one side, you have this like weird sort of like toxic masculinity, like violence kind of fantasy thing going on. And on the other side, it's the carving of a watermelon video that like you would see on Instagram or whatever and be like, oh, that's kind of interesting. That's neat that somebody knows how to do that. And there was like multiple of these videos. And like honestly, when I was watching it, like I just got creeped out. Like it was just creepy because there was no explanation as to why the two things were combined. There was really no logical reason for the two things to be combined. And I just thought like this is for somebody who I don't know is maybe not mentally stable. This could be something that like seems to me like a brainwashing or hypnotization type thing. I don't know enough about the platform, but like
Yeah,
anyway, that was one of the
I've seen a
things where
lot
I
of
was like,
content like this myself, actually. Like
okay,
where,
tell me about it.
like, so this might say a lot about like what kind of TikTok is being sent to me. But like, I you're familiar with the am I the asshole on Reddit page?
No,
Like,
no, but go ahead.
so it's like a TikTok page where people are like, you know, they'll describe situations where they're like, I'm not sure if I was the asshole in this situation. I need
Okay,
the
all right.
internet's advice to tell me if I'm
Yeah,
the asshole or not. And then
yeah.
people will be like, yeah, you're the asshole, or no, you're not the asshole. So there's these TikTok creators who like will read these am I the asshole stories from Reddit and just have that. And then on the other side of the thing, they're like they have someone doing the ASMR thing. They're like, sometimes they're baking cakes, sometimes they're like carving, they're whittling a stick or something,
So
little things like
weird.
that. And I think it's to kind of give you something to watch,
Right,
to entertain your brain, to keep it focused on that,
right.
and so you're still listening to it. Because
Yes.
if you're just hearing someone's being like, oh no, my sister-in-law
Ah,
called me fat and I'm punched her, am I the asshole? Like that.
I
If you're
see.
hearing that but you're not, and you're not doing anything else on TikTok, you'll scroll. you know
Right.
it's to keep
Okay,
you
that
watching.
makes a lot of sense actually. And I didn't think of that. I guess I was being a little bit more conspiratorial myself when I saw this thing, but that definitely makes sense. Yeah, because like then it keeps you engaged, and it reminded me there was another one that I'm trying to remember right now, that was sort of like clearly that, like the video,
Mhm.
oh, I know what it was. It was like I had this moment where I was like scrolling through the videos that he had gone through on TikTok, and what I found was like it was not the video thing that you're describing, but what I found was like a lot of them had like ASMR, and you could because you can see the title of a song that's playing on TikTok, below whatever video is
Yeah.
playing, and it would be like a fucking Marjorie Taylor Greene rant about like illegal immigrants or something, and then the song that was playing was like sleep meditation or something, or like some sort of
Mhm.
like electronic music but like soothing stuff. And I was like, oh, well, this is how they get you right here, right? I mean, you're literally
Yeah.
listening to meditation music and injecting like right-wing extremism into your frontal cortex. So like seeing that through the eyes, and knowing about like what this guy is now like in jail for, it was very troubling to me, because I'm
Right.
like, this is a level of radicalization that like even somebody like me who's spent the last 4 years like looking at people's insane shit on Facebook basically like was shocking.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was very troubling.
Absolutely. And I think, like, to me, what I found from watching the content that he posted and watching his own TikToks was, it was clear that he was manipulated by the algorithm.
100%.
And it he's being fed content that confirms his anxieties about the government and authority generally.
Yep.
And I think the main thing that I saw from the content he posted and shared was this like deeply seated fear and paranoia, and the algorithms just took advantage of it and they
Yep.
profited from it.
Right. Right. And I mean, I think that honestly, like, there was definitely a part of me in writing and reporting this story, as there always is a small part of me that feels bad for the person that I'm writing about, even though this guy was potentially like a very real danger, not just to himself and to people around him, but to complete and utter strangers who have no involvement in any of this stuff.
Mhm.
But there was definitely a part of me that was like, this guy clearly had some mental health issues that probably were not being dealt with, and was getting fed by these algorithms that were like preying on that. And like that's how a lot of people end up in situations like what he's in now.
Yeah, the algorithms know more about you than you know about yourself.
Right. And it just it sucks in a way that this guy didn't have more potentially. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this, but like we've talked about before, I couldn't help but wonder, like, where is the family in this situation that is seeing this stuff?
Yeah,
um
he would make references to like his family sometimes and be like, "My family thinks I'm nuts," and he would tag different family members in some of his posts too. Not all
he
of them. He
was
would tag certain ones, but
right. I mean, and look, I mean, I think part of the answer, unfortunately, and maybe I'll one day get in trouble for this, or this fucking guy will show up in my house with a gun or something. But part of the answer to where was the family was that he was tagging his father in a lot of these, especially the anti-government right-wing conspiracy, especially the gun stuff. He was tagging his dad in those posts. And then you slide on over to dad's Facebook page, and it's him with an assault rifle, and it's him with a profile picture of the end of a of a
Barrel.
barrel of a gun that says wrong house, right? Like, so this guy is potentially into all of this stuff too. So there's a little bit of the answer, but it just made me kind of wonder, like, I don't know, if I saw somebody that I know posting stuff like this on Facebook, like, I wouldn't just sit there and watch it happen. I might try to reach out to that person and be like, hey man, do you want to talk? And like, let me let me give you my take on some of this stuff that you're doing here. I mean, obviously, some people are beyond saving, especially with the right wing conspiracy stuff. But if it was somebody that I knew personally, I think that I would have enough empathy to like reach out and be like, "Hey, man, this is not true. Like, I
Yeah.
love you.
Being
I don't want
gentle about
anything."
it.
Right. I don't want anything bad to happen to you, but like I'm just telling you as a friend and as somebody who's somewhat knowledgeable about this, like I'm looking out for your best interest here. And
Yeah, like,
anyway,
"Hey, let's go outside and touch some grass," kinda thing.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, even in some of the posts, we found that his significant other had even sort of said some things like that. Like,
Mm,
I think you need to put the phone down at some point. She said something like that.
mhm, absolutely.
Um,
You know, what do like, at the end of the day, like, what do you think this all means? Broader scope.
Well, I'm gonna tell you right now that I definitely am like, if somebody wants to ban TikTok, go ahead and do it. I mean, fucking hell, man, that shit was absolutely crazy. If there's redeeming value to what's happening out there, I just don't see how the risk or the reward outweighs the risk of what I saw on there. I think that Mattis is representative of tens of millions of Americans who believe this stuff. And I think that a lot of it is online bluster. Um, you know, my one of my favorite musicians, Jeremy Pinnell, calls these guys keyboard cowboys or computer cowboys. I think there's a lot of that. I think it's a lot of just shit talking online, and nobody's actually going to go out there and do anything about it. But I don't know, when you get to the point where you're building pipe bombs in your house, that tells me that like maybe you are ready to do something about it. And so like, so what do I think what all this means? Mattis is representative of tens of millions of Americans who believe in far right extremist anti government conspiracies. He was perhaps willing to do something about it. And I think that among those tens of millions of Americans that he represents, there's a not insignificant portion who are willing to do something about it. And I think that that is going to metastasize in the form of like everything from potential bombing type things, like maybe what he was thinking about doing, to like lone wolf right wing terror attacks, to, you know, fucking somebody showing up at the Speaker of the House's house to beat the shit out of her husband. Like, we already know what this turns into. And it
Mhm.
turns into people committing violence based on these beliefs. And so, really, the question for me is like not whether or not the violence is going to happen, but how widespread will it be, and in what form will it come, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, to me, like, I think, like, it's not just a TikTok problem. This is, like, a internet problem where, like, companies are profiting off of, you know, taking people down these really deep, dark rabbit holes.
Right.
And, like, this will stop when the profits stop coming from that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And
But is
we
that ever
we
gonna stop?
well, I mean, I think that we know a little bit of the answer to that right now, which is that Facebook is like deprioritizing content moderation. It was only 4 years ago when Facebook said, not only are we going to try to cut down on the election misinformation, but we're going to like go out there and try to help register people to vote and provide them with accurate information about voting and polling locations, and like that's all gone now, So I think they've made their decision, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know if or how like that profit spigot would get turned off. I don't really
Yeah.
see them making that decision on their own,
Yeah. Is it our jobs as reporters to figure that out for them, or is it us to just kind of point at it,
I think it's just there to point at, but I mean, this is like a big point, for lack of a better term. Like, I feel like this guy, I'm like, I want people to see this story because I want them to understand. Like, obviously, he's an extreme example. Like, I go on Facebook every single day. I have not gotten radicalized towards anything other than like, I want to buy that other guitar that I don't need. But for some people, for whatever reason, for a variety of reasons, they're not able to withstand that. And like, this is one of those instances, like what you're saying, like, hey, we're pointing at this and going like, I don't know, it seems like a problem, So we'll see if like the powers that be pay attention to stuff like this, I guess.
Sure. Well, should we wrap this up?
Yes, yeah, let's do it. All right. Bree Zender, partner in crime and Swiss Army knife here at American Doom. Thanks a lot for being here today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it.
All right, see you. Bye. Thank you for listening to American Doom. This podcast is just a part of my work as a writer and journalist. To keep up, or at least to try to, because chaos and speed are the two primary drivers of my work, you can subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just search for American Doom there, and you'll find the investigations and stories that I cover. Coming up on my newsletter are more dives into election deniers working as local election officials across the country. This is work I've been doing mostly by myself for the last 4 years, and it's not possible without your support. American Doom is the only place that you'll find reporting on local election denier officials. So if you support this effort to protect against threats to democracy, please subscribe to my newsletter, American Doom, on Substack. Thank you.